The golden tones of Vincent Kennedy McMahon bring us into this, the 15th episode of Mike and Tom Present. I'm Tom, that's Mike, and Joe Gagne is our third Mike for the evening. And Joe, how you doing?
Doing great. Two-time guest. Am I the first? No, T-Mac was on twice. So
yeah.
we're tied.
So in order to break the tie, you have to, go bobbing for apples or something. We need to arrange a contest.
All right.
Contests are fun. But anyway, speaking of contests, it's almost Thanksgiving, and tonight's the night they're actually doing the event this year, Sunday pay-per-views. But we decided, because Mike brought it up on an episode a few episodes ago, that during the Joe versus the World Survivor Series retrospective, the 4 Survivor Series that were, really cool, the first 4 were, kind of glossed over. So we're taking it upon ourselves to ungloss them, so to speak, to make them dirtier.
I feel like I'm on Tosh.0 here. This is my web redemption.
Yeah. Exactly. We're going to have you do a moonsault on Scorpio Sky off of a chair. But anyway, we're going to recap the first 4 only. The first 4 Survivor Series pay-per-view events, because those are the only 4 that matter.
Yeah, Survivor Series, in its purest form before they started putting singles matches and then moved it outside Thanksgiving night and stuff like that. So I guess it's kind of...
Yeah, they have really tinkered with the Survivor Series format over the years. I know they've done wild things with the Royal Rumble, but it's not like they never had the Royal Rumble one year. They've always at least had it.
Yeah.
I like to see them try that one year. Just name a show after, a match and then not have that match at the show. Or do SummerSlam in, November.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to start in order, because that's how these things go. We start in chronological order with 1987, which... the story, we don't need to really go into the story of the whole why Survivor Series exists, but pretty much Vince McMahon didn't want Starrcade on pay-per-view. So he said, hey, carry this instead of Starrcade, which is running on the same night, and you'll get to carry WrestleMania 4. Since WrestleMania 3 was it did huge numbers on it was one of the very first major pay-per-views for any type of genre, and the pay-per-view companies were like, yes, Vince, we'll do whatever. And I remember hearing something like Crockett even offered to move it to the afternoon, and Vince was like, no, we just want you out of here. Get away, smelly old man. And so this concept was born, and I'd really like to know who came up. I'm assuming it's Pat Patterson, because he came up with everything. So I'm assuming the Survivor Series is his baby as well. So yeah, 87. Let's go back and look at this first match on the card, and I'm assuming we can go match by match since there's 4 matches a show. Sure. We're only doing 4 shows, or so. The first one we have the Macho Man, Randy Savage, along with Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Jake Roberts, Jim Dugan, and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat going over.
Everybody had a nickname.
Exactly.
That's one thing I remember when I went and rewatched this. It was Macho Man, Randy Savage, Jake the Snake, Ricky the Dragon, Brutus the Barber, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Not a lot of people have nicknames anymore.
And that's what makes 80s, when people name drop wrestling anymore that don't watch wrestling, they always go to the 80s WWF because everybody had a nickname you can remember.
Yeah.
Killer B. Brian Blair. That's way more memorable than name a guy. Kurt Hawkins.
Kurt Hawkins, exactly.
Yeah. But they wrestled a team
They
wrestled a team that I believe every guy on the team had a manager. Honky Tonk Man, Outlaw. Ron Bass maybe didn't have a manager.
I don't remember him having.
No, the tag team match. In the tag team match, all the heel tag teams had a manager, I believe.
Okay, yeah, I do remember that because there was a huddle with Fuji and Bobby Heenan and Jimmy Hart. There was this should be a picture somewhere.
Exactly.
Museum. But anyway, the Honky Tonk Man and Outlaw Ron Bass, the King Harley Race, who I thought was the all-star of this match, but that's beside the point. Hercules Hernandez and Dangerous Danny Davis, who is not the other Danny Davis. Everyone seems to think that he's the OVW Danny Davis, and he's not.
Nah.
Really? Even though he would have shrunk 6 inches?
Yeah.
For some reason, whenever the name Danny Davis comes up online and people aren't familiar with OVW, they assume it's the referee from New England. That's running OVW.
Well, I know who it is because I remember it from that time, but I guess maybe the newer fans.
I mean, Danny Davis is kind of it's not an uncommon name. It's not like his name's Mortimer Diphthong and there's 2 of them running around and you're like, well, it must be the same guy.
No, but I'm sure that guy's in FCW right now.
So but anyway, one thing I remember about this match, and Joe, if you want to comment too, because it's one of those little Survivor Series quirks that like I always love is like when they do like the pre-match promo and they'll have like everyone like doing like their promo like right before, and then I think like for this one they had like Honky Tonk Man and they, they had Jimmy Hart and Bobby Heenan, two of the managers. And one thing I always liked about the Survivors too, they always had like the managers like they always like coexisted. There was like one of the few times you'd see like the managers like they were friends with one another, and like during a match and stuff like that. And it's like everyone cuts like a 5-second promo like, oh, we're gonna be the best because we're gonna survive. Oh, tell him, Herc. And then Hercules would say like, a 5-second like, promo, and then
Mount Olympus something.
Yeah.
No.
But I was gonna say it's always like one of my favorite parts of the Survivor Series was like these like pre-match promos, like even like ones like later years. I remember like the Vipers did it like in the bathroom or something like that. They would do them like they would do them like in like really odd locations for some of them, but they were always really entertaining, and this show had plenty of them.
And I hate to be the guy that's all like wrestling sucks these days because of something. But no, that Mike brought up something. But in general, like all the baby faces on the heels used to be friends, and nowadays it's like they're all their own little entities, and they sometimes get thrown together for like random tag matches. But they're not all buddies, which stinks because it makes something like this a lot more awesomer. Just thinking, what would happen if Brutus Beefcake hung out with Ricky Steamboat? They'd go cut hair at a dragon salon. But I'm sure
fire. Well,
I'm sure Brutus Beefcake has breathed fire before because he's a belligerent drunk. But the thing I remember most about that match was Harley Race being Harley Race and bumping around everywhere, despite being a broken down old man with blonde hair. Who told him to dye his hair blonde? Out of all the men, he looks almost as bad with blonde hair as that guy from My Chemical Romance. That's a reference over everyone's head.
Way lost on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know what he looks like. I mean, I know who they are, but not enough to know. But anyway, Joe, what do you think about this match?
I liked it a lot. It's strange in the sense that when they set up this pay-per-view, there's really nothing on the line. Like, there were no titles defended, and in a match like this, the best you could hope for was the heels would lose, which they did, but the benefit of these is that it can be a lot faster paced than a lot of the matches were, because you have 4 guys to tag out to, and there were a lot of really good workers in this match. Like, when you look at, Savage and Steamboat on the same team, and, it's enjoyable. It's a quick 19 minutes. Matches here go a lot longer than they did around that time, like 1987, but they're a lot faster paced and a lot more enjoyable. And this is, actually, I like the tag match a lot better, but this is actually still a good active match.
Also, was it just me, or was it total BS that Randy Savage was teaming up with Ricky Steamboat?
Yeah.
And Ricky Steamboat teaming up with Jake Roberts?
Oh,
well,
sure.
yeah, like in 1987 too, right?
It was right after, those were like 2 of Steamboat's biggest rivals, and they were just like buddies.
Yeah, it's kind of like all is forgiven when you became a good guy. Like, a few years later, Big Boss Man used to chain men to the ropes and beat them, but he's okay now. He's a good guy.
Yeah, hey, you're not such a
we'll
bad
get
guy.
that later, because one year he was feuding with Hogan, and the next he was on Hogan's Survivor Series team. So moving on, we had the ladies come out. I believe this is one of the only non-all-male Survivor Series matches ever.
Well, there's
95, yeah.
Yeah,
the
All Japan ladies, which I think it would have been short, but I don't think the girls were brought in to do anything but bump for Aja Kong in that match. But
they did one last year too, right? That was very, very short. It was like a 5-minute match. I want to say
there might have been, yeah.
It was nothing worth terribly mentioning. So
this one we had I think they went out of their way to get female independent wrestlers to come in for this, because I don't think Donna Christianella had worked for them in a while. And by the way, let me just go through the match. It's Moolah, Rockin' Robin, Velvet McIntyre, and the Jumping Bomb Angels, who were awesome. And they defeated Sensational Sherry, not that Dawn Murray, Donna Christianella, and the Glamour Girls, who I like them just because one of them did a power bomb in 1987. There was a match in primetime that was on 24/7 2 years ago, and one of them decides, hey, I'm going to jackknife this girl like Vader. It was amazing. But this was pretty much, to the best of my memory, a showcase for the Jumping Bomb Angels. That was
the whole point of the match, to where they had to, like you said, dig up women. Donna Christianella, I don't think I've heard of before or since, and yeah, it was basically a spotlight for them. And for a 20-minute women's match in 1987, it's all about the Jumping Bomb Angels. And if you weren't around back then, it's hard to overemphasize just how dynamic they were. It was like if Rey Mysterio showed up in 1990 and was doing this stuff. It was just crazy, and that's really the only purpose for this match. But it served its purpose well, because they were over pretty huge when they won the ladies tag titles, which I'm pretty sure it vanished into the ether. But
they were brought in just for that feud, and then. But also, since it's 80s WWF, Vince McMahon didn't bother learning their names.
No.
And I think Jesse Ventura one time, like maybe at the Royal Rumble, said their names correctly. But otherwise, no. They were just Jumping Bomb Angel 1 and Jumping Bomb Angel 2.
I think at the Rumble in '88, there was I heard there was a thing where you could get Vince's headset feed, and you could hear him say, like, what are their names? And he's like, whoa, I butchered the fuck out of that. Yeah. He never got that down.
Yeah, speaking of commentary, I just wanted to tell a quick story I forgot to. In storage somewhere in the middle of Indiana, there is a cassette tape laying around. What was the name of that recorder thing from Home Alone 2 that Kevin used to talk into? Like, the Talk Boy or something like that?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I just can't think of it at the top of my head. It has like a proper name to it. I forget. But
there's a cassette tape with a 9-year-old Tom commentating the 1987 Survivor Series. I had it, and I had the VHS tape, so I decided, why not? So one day after school, I did commentary for the whole show. I don't think I called one move. And there was like
the top.
So thank you, Mike, for looking it up, because I'm too late.
It was. I think I actually got one of those for Christmas in 1992 as well, so there you go.
Speaking of 1992, there were a lot of so many men in this next match. There were probably 1992 of them.
Yeah, exactly. This is another good example of like those pre-match promos where they just had like 16 guys and they had like, I know like Strikeforce's team especially where they were cheesy, you know what I mean? Like all like, they're all like hugging each other and like, you know, patting each other on the back and like, you know.
And if you've never seen these, he's not exaggerating. Like there were a lot of power hugging.
There was. They were just.
A lot of high fives. Like, if you're into the high five, watch this promo before this match.
Yeah.
You have every generic babyface team in the world.
Exactly.
The Killer Bees, the Young Stallions.
Young Stallions, yeah.
Which I was a big Young Stallions fan.
Oh yeah, I like them too. I'm a big Paul Roma and Jim Powers fan, so I kind of like them. I don't know.
Jimmy Powers, I'm gonna say this now. I think I got Rob Naylor behind it on this theory once. He kind of looks like the handicap girl from Facts of Life. Like, I want to do kind of like a picture to picture because he looks just like her. Like if his head was tilted just a little bit.
Yeah.
It'd be the same person. But anyway, the match was Strikeforce, the Bulldogs, the Rougeau brothers, which weren't they heels by then? The Rougeau?
No, they were still on the face side.
Okay, I was wondering because they showed up in like late '85, and all we remember is like their heel run. So I figured they did it a lot longer than. But anyway, the Rougeaus were on the team, and the Killer Bees and the Young Stallions. They defeated Demolition, the Hearts, the Islanders, the new Dream Team, not the old one, but the new one since British Beefcake saw the light. Greg Valentine and Dino Bravo, and the Bolsheviks, which cutesy little WWF '80s line to say something Russian to make it sound like a cuss word. Because they did lots of that stuff in the 80s. Like, you look back at old WWF stuff, and it's like, this is kind of dirty for that time. Like, Tuesday Night Titans, that's the filthiest show ever. There was a dating game show on there once, and Bret Hart was making rape jokes the entire time. I'm like, how did this air?
Yeah, man, you go back and watch a lot of those TNT shows. There's, like, some really funny stuff, in skits on those shows, so I recommend it. But one thing I really like about this match is, like, they all entered the Demolition's theme song, and they all had managers. Like, if you look at this match, the reason I like this match and, like, the one from the next year, 1988, it's, like, a really good yearbook of, like, all, like, the great tag teams that were in the WWF that year. And I'm a really big WWF tag team guy, and I think you kind of had, like, a lot of great teams, and it's, like, I couldn't even imagine if they were to put something like this together today. I don't even think they could have,
I actually tried. Like,
know?
I was going to experiment. I was trying to try to fantasy book one of these, because I love tag team versions of matches. Like, the Battle Royal from before WrestleMania 14, that match is horrible, but I love it because it's a tag team Battle Royal. Because how often can you see, Farouk and Flash Funk team up in a Battle Royal nonetheless? I don't know, I love the concept of...
Yeah, Joe, your thoughts?
I just it's just the match is kind of striking because I think there are 5 teams on both sides. Like, it was like almost the entire apron was just covered with men, and it was just like a complete sight, and the talent in here is just phenomenal in here, and it's just the only thing strange was like who they chose to have go over in the end, the Young Stallions and the Killer Bees, who both really never did anything else as a tag team.
They seriously put them over just to get over like a mid-card
gimmick,
like the mask thing.
Yeah, for a 37-minute match, which had to have been maybe not the longest match of the 80s, it may have been, but that's profoundly long for actually any match, but especially for the WWF in 1987. Yeah, this was my favorite match of the show, because just all the, like, oh, look at all these tag teams. It's really fast and good, and yeah, it's good.
And also, like, Jesse Ventura was awesome during this match. Like, he had these awesome lines, like, I would love to be in this type of match, because I'd just be hanging out with my buddies the whole time. And, there was one, like somebody ran, one of the heels, I think it was, like, Nikolai Volkov rammed the babyface's face into Zhukov's boot, and he's like, you have 19 options at ringside, pick a boot. But, yeah, Ventura was awesome during these tag team matches. And yeah, like you guys brought up, like, since it was a tag team match where you had, like, 10 guys on your team, they could just do a bunch of moves and then one guy could get out. And it's not this issue where everyone complains these days, oh, nobody sells. Well, everybody could go outside the ring and sell and just keep the moves going. Like a non-stop continuum. So yeah, it was, and it was a very long match, like Joe said, but I believe the next year was even longer.
Yeah, it was, I think it broke 40-minute mark.
It was like 47, 48. It went forever. Jesus. It was uncut on the VHS. They cut everything on those VHSs, but that match wasn't, which was awesome since it was a great match, but just out of all the matches to leave uncut. So yeah. But yeah, the Bees went over doing their mask thing, which if you've never seen it, they would both put on a mask and like confuse the referee as to which one was which, and then switch the legal guy, which somebody needs to bring back. I don't know who, but somebody does. Santino and Kozlov. That'd actually be kind of funny since they look nothing alike. So we have the main event, and this is pretty much almost the storyline reason why the whole thing was put together, was they wanted to get Andre and Hogan back in the ring against each other, but they couldn't.
Hey Tom, I think Joe said that he cut out, or he can't hear you, I don't think. Joe, could you hear me?
Yeah, I'm back now.
Okay.
I dropped off for a second.
All right, there we go. I think we're good. You there, Tom?
Yeah, I'm just going to start off from where I started on the main event. So we have the main event, which I believe even the storyline reason they gave was Hogan and Andre, they wanted to get them back together, but Andre wasn't in contention for a title shot or something like that. So they had to put together this tag match to get them, because the feud was just too intense, man. Just too intense. So we had Andre, we had Ravishing Rick Rude, King Kong Bundy, Butch Reed, and the One Man Gang. And seriously, out of all those guys, Rick Rude kind of stands out like a thumb, like a sore thumb amongst, the big fat guys, and then Butch Reed, who actually I think stood out even more, but I don't know why I'm rambling about that. But they defeated the team of Hogan, which is the Hulkster, not, Paul, along with Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, Bam Bam Bigelow, Don Morocco, the original Rock, and Ken Patera in a elimination bout. And there were some managers outside the ring during this bad boy. You had Heenan, you had Slick, you had Oliver Humperdinck representing Bam Bam Bigelow. Does anyone ever, said in, a shoot interview why Oliver Humperdinck was with Bigelow? Out of all the managers.
Wasn't it he was the free agent or something like that, and he just ended up signing with Oliver Humperdinck?
Yeah, Oliver Humperdinck is the weirdest swerve ever. Because was Humperdinck even with them before then, or was that his debut?
I don't remember.
I think it was
I have
his
no idea. That's
protege, too.
Yeah, that's a little before my time. I'm not really sure. I wonder if there's any observers, something around that kind of.
Well, I know Billy Graham was originally supposed to be in this match, but there was that deal where he came back thinking that his hip was all right, and then it just crapped out on him again, and Butch Reed injured him. So they threw together the whole Don Morocco thing at the last second. So yeah, this thing I remember because you have Hogan, who's the top babyface at the time, and he's not the last survivor. He wasn't in there at the end. They got rid of him in the middle, I think. They did some schmoz deal where, he was counted out. I'm looking at it now. And it says when Bundy and One Man Gang would not allow him to get back in the ring. And it kind of sounds like they just stood there, we're so fat. And then they had Bigelow go to the finale, which kind of makes you think that he was supposed to be Hogan's next buddy that was supposed to turn on him. And then wasn't he in the NWA within months after this?
He was gone. He was at WrestleMania 4 the next year, and I know he showed up in the NWA in, I think, 89. He kind of bounced around. But yeah, the two stories of this match, and all the other prior three matches had babyface wins, which was a little strange. So you kind of thought something was up, but it was still shocking to see Hogan, even though he wasn't pinned. Even a count-out loss for him was pretty amazing. And then you had Bigelow going through. I think it was Bundy and One Man Gang, and then trying to beat Andre but falling short. And it was actually a really solid storyline. And I guess Bigelow had, I guess not parts, but like attitude issues where they just didn't want to go with him after that. I guess he had problems with Andre, which is a shame. But yeah, as a storytelling match, it's pretty good. And I don't know, not super wrestling, but it's still kind of shocking to see a pay-per-view end in such a somewhat dour manner back then.
Mike, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. What do you think about this mess? This mess match?
Exactly. Like, I don't really have much to say. I'd rather spend my time talking about something a little better. But I was gonna say, no, that's not meant to be like. It's just that, I mean, this was all right. It was what it was, because basically the main focus of this was to kind of get Andre over, because, you know, back then, obviously, this was basically the first pay-per-view outside of the WrestleManias, well, and the Wrestling Classic, and that they wanted to maybe kind of build for that Andre Hogan match that happened in, I guess March was at the main event before the WrestleMania 4 tournament match. So I guess they were trying to get on. It was like, this wasn't supposed to be billed as like Andre and Hulk's like big meeting, you know,
like,
since
like the commercials at the time were just like a stare of Andre and Hogan. Almost like if you didn't know what was going on, you'd think it was Andre versus Hogan in a singles match.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of wacky. But anyway, also I just wanted to note that, you know, watching this back reminded me of how much I loved when like a small fat guy would wrestle a big fat guy. It's like just fat guys wrestling each other. It's lots of fun. Lots of fun. Because they're fat. And like Bigelow in there with Andre just was awesome, because Bigelow was so huge, and then Andre's like, no, you're not. They would pick him up by the palm and then like stretch out the back of his spandex. Like, that was... So anyway, let's move on to 88. We opened up with I believe it was the 48-minute long Tag Team Survivor Series match, which was a lot better because it looks like it had way better workers in it. Like, the Powers of Pain, who had been...
No, actually, I don't think that opened it. Did it?
Yeah, it opened the show.
I thought the Ultimate Warriors match opened it up.
No, the Warrior opened up in 90, but in 88 it was, because Warriors... I think that match was like right before intermission, or right after.
No,
intermission.
it was Warriors. At least that's
I just watched it. I was gonna say, I just rewatched it. So
in 88.
In 88, yeah.
This is I even looked up. I'm even looking up a set of results, and it says that the tag team match went on first.
You're very prepared, Alan.
Wow, that'll get you back on.
I know, right? That's gonna get me that. That's gonna get me back on. I'm sorry, Alan. You knew
I'm saying, where are you guys looking at? Because according to the results I have up, the tag team match went on first.
Wikipedia.
Because see, on the VHS tape even, it has the tag team match first. Did they like switch it around?
No, it was always like that. I actually have like the pay-per-view version. I bought it off Crazy Max like years ago, and it opens up with the Warriors match against the Honky Tonk Man.
Well, then I guess we can talk about that first, because every version of the show I've ever seen starts with a tag team match, and then the Warriors match goes on after the Andre's team versus the Doug and Jake Roberts team.
That's really bizarre, because I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I'm saying I just had the pay-per-view version, and this match was first. But anyway, regardless of that.
Let's just talk about the Warrior match first.
Anyway, Joe, what'd you think of it?
Thought it was okay. I thought Warrior and Beefcake could have done a better job recruiting, because they really had some scrubs.
Yeah.
Blue Blazer, who I loved but was not really a top guy. Jim Brunzell and Sam Houston did not last till the end, surprisingly. But,
I know.
Warrior showcase and a lot better stuff, Joe, but not bad.
Yeah, I love that Warrior was just completely gassed at the end and just pinned Ron Bass and Greg Valentine. Like double axe handles were like the pinfall for like the last two. I mean, it was really funny, but yeah, you don't see those kind of eliminations anymore. Tom?
Also started the trend of Bad News Brown having problems with his teammates.
Yeah.
See, what I'm wondering, because Joe mentioned, Warrior having all these scrubs, the Sam Houstons, the Jim Brunzells of the world, is, like, if this were all real, like, how do you pick the teams? Like, is it dodgeball style, where, like, a bunch of captains get assigned, and they're like, okay, you have this, go pick guys one at a time. Because, actually, I could almost see Warrior picking Sam Houston, like, on accident, like, going on a rant about the galaxies and the stars, and then he mentions, something about Houston, Texas, and they're like, fine, you get Sam Houston. And he's going on about like bees wrecking ships. You got Jim Brunzell, buddy. I don't know.
Maybe they had a contest like, all right, maybe I can last till the end even if I pick the biggest scrubs, like
The
you
Blue
know,
Blazer.
Yeah, like on that Save the Bell episode where they go into the ROTC and Zach has to pick the teams.
Yeah.
And he's like, I pick Screech, Lisa, the fat kid, and the dumb girl. And he's like, okay, Zach, that's your team. So later you get all the jocks.
Yeah, he wins the obstacle course. But anyway.
I mean, I didn't actually watch this match in full in the preparation. I just kind of skimmed along.
Yeah, same here.
Is this the one where Greg Valentine crushed Owen Hart's nuts? No, there was legitimately Owen got injured because there was a leapfrog spot. I forget if it was like here or at a house show right after this, where Owen didn't go up high enough and Valentine headbutted him right in the junk and he went down and his like scrotum like swelled to like the size of a shoe. I swear this is a true story because this was on.
I've heard of this, but I'm not sure when it happened. It may have been here, but I am uncertain. But I do know.
I'm not sure.
Crushed.
Yeah, I was almost hoping it was on here so I can go back tonight and watch Owen Hart's genitals explode. That sounded awesome.
Yeah, but anyway, the tag team match. If you want to move on to that,
I took place second on the card.
Yeah, Joe Gagne. Talk about the tag team match.
A lot like last year, kind of that big epic spectacle where just tons of guys on the apron, where guys had to like get out of the way if someone's running the ropes, which I always thought was funny and. Yeah, even better than last year, I thought, because you had like the Brainbusters and the Rockers in now, and just you still. I think this was the last British Bulldogs match too, and
yeah, Dynamite was out of there after this was like his last show.
Yeah, and kind of the story in the end where Mr. Fuji turns on Demolition and sides with the Powers of Pain, who end up going over in the end. The double turn and like just complete nonstop action. It's really awesome. Like if you. See, this might have been the best match out of any of the four we're talking about here, and maybe for a while because it's just really awesome.
And you brought up the whole Powers of Pain demolition turn where they did this double turn to get Demolition over as the baby faces and the Powers over as the heels. And it's funny because if you watch the tape, it almost comes off like Mr. Fuji turned babyface, which you think is kind of impossible. But like even the crowd kind of reacted like that, and like they edited, they kind of tried to edit it on the home video version, but yeah, it totally came off like that Sid Hogan thing from the One Rumble, where like Hogan gets pulled over and then everyone's like, "You're awesome, Sid. F you, Hogan." No, this is awesome because you had like some of the best teams of the '80s in here. You had the Bulldogs, you had the Hart, you had Bret Hart in there, you had the Rockers, you had even Roma and Jim Powers were flying around. And then you had Tully was awesome in this match. After the two Brainbusters, like Arn was all right, but Tully was the man. If you go back and watch this thing, he was flying around for everybody and doing all sorts of cool shtick. And I'm sure the Conquistadors were good for what they were, and they were like the last heel team, weren't they?
They were. They made it to the end, 42 minutes.
Like if they ever did like a tag team Survivor match, like they did in '90, it would be like the worst match ever because it'd be the Killer Bees and the Young Stallions against the Conquistadors. Which that's a Superstars of Wrestling special if you ever heard of one. But yeah, the Rougeaus, the famous Rougeaus Bulldog story also in this match where they had to get rid of the Rougeaus like within the first 5 minutes so they can get out of the building because Dynamite wanted to kill Jacques. Like I don't know.
Yeah, you noticed that, and I think like Brett pins one of the Rougeaus too, and he basically like just tells him, get the hell out of here now. So which
is weird because Jacques and Dynamite worked a couple sequences together in the match.
Yeah, they did.
But like you could see Dynamite like saying crap to him the whole time, which I'm imagining is like, if you're here when I get back, I'm gonna pistol whip you or something. I'm gonna shoot you in the balls, dude.
I wonder what it would have sounded like, Jacques. I wonder what Jacques said to Dynamite.
He's probably like, okay, bro. And also, Dynamite had that gross mustache.
Yeah.
That's true.
Like, I think a lot of mustaches are cool. Dynamite Kid's mustache was disgusting. Like, that thing was something. And Davy's hair was kind of greasy. Like, those because we're not having a good fashion night. But no, this match is awesome. Like, I think it's probably my favorite Survivor Series match ever that isn't the opener of the 95 show, which is unbelievable. Pretty much the WBF 1995 Cruiserweight Division match with like,
we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll get into that show in a little bit because I wanted to mention something real quick before we headed off, so we'll probably talk about that. But just to kind of finish up this match, I guess if you wanted to, move on to the next one real quick. It was like Andre's team against Hoxha Jim Duggan's team. It really wasn't probably as exciting as it sounds because Jim Duggan's team had such WF All-Stars as Scott Casey and Ken Patera, so not maybe the best Survivor Series match, but at least it only went a half hour.
Well, there was actually a story behind the Scott Casey deal, which I didn't know until I just read about it the other day, doing research like I should be. Junkyard Dog was originally supposed to be a part of the team to give it a little bit more star power, but then he's all like, I'm going to get out of here and go to the NWA, which that run went fantastically. So they brought back Brian Blair, who I believe had gotten fired or was on a like per night deal or something like that by this point. And then he's like, no, sorry guys, I'm not doing that. So with like a week to go left on TV, they had nobody else on the roster, and they called up Scott Casey. Hey, could you come like the day before TV so we can use it in the pay-per-view? Sure, whatever. And that's how he got on. So.
Yeah, I actually brought out some of my old WWF magazines like I did last time for this show. And, on one of them, B. Brian Blair was listed as the fifth participant. So I was actually curious to that story. So.
And also reading the results here on Wikipedia, like I apparently should have been the whole time.
Yeah.
Ken Patera was the first guy out, not Scott Casey, which perturbs me. Like, was he really that low on the total bowl that time? Like, you can imagine, like, Andre would, like, grab Scott Casey and, like, crush him in the first 5 seconds of the match, but no. But anyway, this is the best result ever, by the way. Tito Santana lost to Andre the Giant when Andre the Giant sat on Santana's chest.
Yeah.
That's so 80s. It's unbelievable. And then Andre, of course, got DQ'd because he wouldn't stop killing Jake Roberts.
It came down to like 4-on-1 Jake against, I think it was Rude, Perfect, Dino Bravo, and Andre. And he pinned Rude to kind of, I mean, they had that feud going on that year that I guess that was kind of the blow-off, but then Andre got DQ'd, but headbutted him, and you had Perfect and Bravo with the win. Dino Bravo kind of he was a survivor in 2 straight years, so perhaps someone you want on your team.
Exactly, and we'll bring that up here in a little while. And Perfect was in that weird mode where, like, he was kind of Mr. Perfect, but they also called him Kurt Hennig, and he wore the little black trunks, like he did in the AWA, so it was like a weird transition period. Like, he didn't know who he wanted to be quite yet, but yeah, it was alright. It served its purpose, and then there was a promo backstage because they're on the Coliseum video during intermission. For some reason, they sent Jesse Ventura back to do the interviews instead of like Mean Gene or Craig DeGeorge or whoever was around. And the Jake Roberts Jesse Ventura interview is something classic because they just argue the whole time about, the snake was legal. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. No, it wasn't. And then there was an interview with Andre where Andre like threw a fit because someone claimed he was scared of the snake, which is awesome. But anyway, moving on to the last match, which by the way, we did not bring up. Didn't every match on this year have co-captains instead of just one captain?
Yeah, it had co-captains.
Yeah, which I always thought, you only have 5 guys. Why do you need 2 of them as the captains? Like, it's like going to work and working in like a 5-man squad, and 2 of them are managers. Anyway, we had the mega power. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, actually, it kind of, and I'll get into it in a minute here, but it kind of made sense why it had co-captains, because kind of the main angle to go out of this show kind of based around Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan. They were both the co-captains of their team. And I guess what happened was, if you guys could obviously jump in too, but if you remember how it was, Big Boss Man, I believe, handcuffed Hogan to the ropes. So in the meantime, Savage is getting his ass kicked by Haku, and I guess from there, like, Hogan ended up getting himself free, goes up to the corner, and then kind of Savage kind of stumbled into the ropes, and Hogan kind of tagged himself in. Like, there was no like drawn out, Savage trying to get Hogan's tag. Hogan kind of tagged himself in and pinned Haku. And that kind of, maybe started the whole Hogan versus Savage that kind of led to WrestleMania 5, for the next, no, actually not the next pay-per-view, because the next pay-per-view was Royal Rumble, but the pay-per-view after that. And if you remember, they even kind of teased like Hogan and Elizabeth. He kind of like picked her up, and it was really awkward there for a second. So I guess looking back on it, 22 years later, you can kind of see like all the seeds being planted. But they really did a good job with Savage and Hogan in this match. What did you guys think?
Like the
Yeah,
post.
it was.
Oh, go ahead.
Go
Joe.
ahead. I was just gonna say it was like SummerSlam. You had Hogan and Savage celebrating together, and same with Survivor Series. Like Savage never got the spotlight to himself, and that was kind of the catalyst of their feud. And I just assumed they had co-captains because Savage and Hogan were on the same team. They probably didn't want to have one be above the other. Although you could have done Hogan being captain, Savage being on his team, and that could piss him off. But that's what I always assumed it was. But it was odd to have 40% of your team be the captain.
Yeah, might as well just have like 4 captains and one guy that just followed the orders. Like Scott Casey, go get her bags, which probably happened actually. I'm sure he carried everyone's bags, like Zeus's, even though he wasn't there that year. I'm sure Zeus called him up in a time machine. Yeah.
I'd carry his bags if he yelled at me too.
All you have to do is poke him in the eyes though, and he'll go down. Anyway, no, Joe brought up the post-match angle where Savage was all like, "No, you didn't" with Elizabeth. He did like the 1987 version or the 1988 version of that look that Jim Halpert gets on his face on The Office whenever something weird happens. But it was like all Randy Savage-fied. like Hogan picks up Elizabeth, and you cut to Savage, who's got like these bugged eyes, like, "What's going on?" But then he like kind of drops it like the next second. But there is a backstage promo. I don't know if it's on like the pay-per-view version of the show or anything else, but on the Coliseum video, like home video version of the show, Jesse Ventura is like, "Hey Randy, what happened out there?" And he kind of ignores it, but at the end says, "I have other business to attend to." And then he walks off camera, and Ventura looks into the camera and goes, "Other business?" Wink. Like the cheesiest ending to a show ever. It was lovely. I believe the home video came about right around the time that Randy Savage turned. So maybe it was a cool little like look back. Like this is what caused it, folks. Waka. So yeah, that's what happened. Hogan, as always, beats the fat guys. Because I honestly think Hogan feuding with all these fat guys is like an insecurity thing from when he was a kid. Because I watched this Nickelodeon special when I was little, where it was like about celebrities as kids, and Hulk Hogan was like a fat kid when he was little. I honestly think Hogan hated fat people subconsciously and wanted to beat them all up because he hates himself. Anyway, going on to 89. Let's go to
89.
He never teamed with Dusty. Anyway, speaking of Dusty, did he actually open up this show, or am I yourself
Yes,
wrong?
he did.
Okay, good. We have the Dream Team, which is the most... So how many teams in the WWF in the 80s were called the Dream Team? Like, everybody at one point was the Dream Team. You had Dusty Rhodes, Brutus Beefcake, Tito Santana, and the Red Rooster in the very first 4-on-4 Survivor Series match. Because they were cutting down the roster. Because I believe it was in the Observer, like, right after the Survivor Series 88, they, like, cut a bunch of guys. Because they weren't bringing in money quite how they once were, but they still wouldn't be making, like, $1 bajillion a year. So, and they just cut like a fourth of the roster. Like the guys they didn't like Sheik, for instance, who was still there in like late 87, 88, despite not being used. They got rid of him and like a bunch of the C show guys. But anyway, you had them against the Enforcers, who did not include Arn Anderson. Had Boss Man, Bad News Brown, the Honky Tonk Man, and Rick Martel. Which I believe he had his mullet at this point, his curly little mullet that just looked lovely. Yeah, I remember Dusty being really flipping over, but not a whole lot else about this.
Yeah, this was the year they switched to they had 5 teams with 4 men on each side instead of 4 with 5 on each side, more of the tag team. And they also added team names this year, and you had the hideously obvious Dream Team, and the Enforcers, which is actually kind of cool if that name had not already been taken by Arn Anderson. But this wasn't too much of a match. Again, Bad News Brown got in trouble when his teammates hit him. Dusty was really over. He won in the end. He had a body press. That's probably all really worth noting.
Michael?
I agree. There wasn't much to it. One of the few Red Rooster pay-per-view appearances, but nothing much else that I really remember. I think it was actually more. It was more like, I guess, toward the end of the Big Boss Man Dusty Rhodes feud, because soon after they had Big Boss Man. Which is actually funny that they didn't even have Big Boss Man and Akeem teaming up in the show, because they were technically they were a team at this time. I'm kind of curious as to why Akeem wasn't on there, because he originally was booked to be on the show. It was actually supposed to be the Big Boss Man, Rick Martel, Akeem, and the Honky Tonk Man, and then they replaced Akeem with Bad News Brown. So I'm not really sure what happened there, but
according to what I'm reading here, I'm on the PW Insider Elite. So, hey, Mike Johnson, I'm still in your news, buddy. Apparently, Hakeem was injured like before the show, so they.
Oh, there you go.
Because apparently the original plan was nobody would want Bad News Brown since he's a horrible team player. And then at the last second, they're like, he's the last guy on the roster we have. We have to.
Yeah, well, they were right because he ended up walking out and eliminating himself. But anyway.
So, and then we move on to the King's Court, which consisted of the Macho King, Randy Savage, along with the Herquack, not Tito, I almost said Tito Bravo, which is actually a fantastic name.
It is.
Dino Bravo and Greg the Hammer Valentine, as they defeated the 4x4s, who were not a bunch of like SUV type cars, but rather Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Rugged Ronnie Garvin, Jim, I'm messing up these names bad, Bret the Hitman Hart, and Hercules.
Actually, before it was supposed to be Canadian Earthquake, it was Canadian Earthquake, but before that it was supposed to be the Widowmaker Barry Windham, according to Keith Elliott Greenberg in the World Wrestling Federation magazine here.
Yeah, so. Like he's even on like the VHS box for the show.
Yeah.
Because I actually have this show on VHS somewhere, and it says clearly on the box, the Widowmaker, and I'm like, because I didn't see the show till I was like 7, and I'm like, who's the Widowmaker? I want to watch this tape and find out. And he was never on there, and I was very upset.
Yeah, when I was really young, I had no idea who Barry Windham was, obviously, because I was 5 years old. So I guess like when I got like those like they had it to like the Widowmaker Barry Windham, like I always thought like that was so cool because I even thought that was like such a unique nickname because I didn't even know like what a widow was, and I guess when I had found out, I learned how intimidating this man was, and then he ended up teaming with Dustin Rhodes.
Like, did he only go after guys who were married?
Yeah.
Like, that'd be an awesome gimmick. I hate your wives. I don't hate you guys. I just hate your wives, so I'm going to hurt them in the only place that I know that it hurts.
I am feuding with the institution of marriage.
Dude, what if he was a polygamist?
Oh, man.
They should have him.
I don't know. This just...
Did he ever team up with Benoit?
Wow!
I know. Wow. I was going to say...
Wow.
I was waiting for someone to make that joke, and I was gonna. Am I gonna be the asshole?
Apparently so.
Yeah. And the answer to that is
Sunday
yes.
evening, Mike.
I was gonna say on a Sunday, nonetheless. I'm shamed, but anyway.
And then he didn't like their wives. Randy Savage was accompanied by Sherry, not Elizabeth, because he had dumped her for being a floozy who had gotten with Hulk Hogan, which I'm sure Hogan loved that, splitting up marriages with his huge muscles.
Earthquake was like one of my favorite wrestlers at this time. He had one of my all-time favorite like first appearances and how they introduced him.
When he was a really fat fan?
Yeah, and he was like Dino Bravo was like, I'm strong, and the Warrior's like, no, I'm stronger. So like, let's have a push-up contest and get a fat guy to sit on us while we do it. So they're like looking in the crowd, and the whole crowd's like, this guy at Earthquake, and he gets in the ring and he's huge, and he kind of has the receding hairline, and he's very soft-spoken. He's like, oh, my name's John, and then he does it, and then like when Warrior, Dino Bravo does his push-ups, and then when Warrior tries it, he like sits on him, and then like drops elbows, and he's like, no, it's the Earthquake, and it's like, oh, awesome, and he sat on Hercules here, and it was awesome.
So I was going to mention something like it was very unique for a WWF guy to have a quote unquote shoot name, but then like if he went in there and said, "Hi, my name's Earthquake," that would kind of throw it off.
That kind of gives it away.
Yeah.
My friends call me Earthquake. Kind of strange they split up the Heart Foundation, and
well, this was when they were trying to push Bret as a singles. Like they did like a few times. Like they did it right after WrestleMania 4. And then during Mr. Perfect's Intercontinental title reign, they had a feud on the house shows with him and Bret. But then it finally took, like, summer of 91 when he won the Intercontinental title. So yeah, the more you know. Speaking of the more that we know, does anyone else have anything to say, or can we move on to the Hulkamaniacs?
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay, yeah. They faced the $1 Million team, had a bunch of $1 Million bodies on it. It was Hogan, Jake Roberts, and the Demolition. By the way, that's a weird team. You have Hogan who's all like, yay America, and drink your vitamins and eat your milk, and he's teaming up with the evil snake guy and the S&M weirdos. And he's facing, the $1 Million Man, Zeus, and the Powers of Pain.
We forgot to mention real quick, this actually showed, it wasn't on the pay-per-view broadcast itself, but if anyone who has ever watched the Coliseum video obviously remembers this was the show where they actually polled the WWF superstars and asked them what they were thankful for that Thanksgiving season. And it maybe offered some of my favorite moments in WWF history. I don't know if obviously you probably remember that, Joe, and holds a dear place to your heart.
I do, yeah. I remember Ted DiBiase just like all my money and things like that.
My favorite part was Roddy Piper, because they had Rude being like, I'm thankful for being ravishing. And then Roddy Piper's right after him, I'm thankful I'm not Ricky Rude. Mwah.
Yeah, and he blows the kiss. That's so great. So.
And then Warrior at the end, he's not thankful for anything. He just wants to talk about galaxies.
Yeah. I remember he did like a PSA to don't smoke in the beginning of that Coliseum video, if I remember correctly. But anyway, yeah, the whole community.
Everybody on here's already heard this by now, so because it was the intro.
Exactly. There you go.
What else happened? Besides Dead Presidents?
Everyone on DiBiase's team got disqualified, which I kind of thought was bullshit back in the day. And Jesse Ventura went like just ape. He's like, "You got to be kidding me!" He didn't swear, but yeah, it's strange they had the Powers of Pain go over Demolition pretty strong, and you'd think, they'll move back into tag title contention, but they were broken up a few months later. And the Colossal Connection got the tag titles.
Yeah, because I think wasn't No Holds Barred. It was coming out on pay-per-view, so they were building to like the big match with Zeus.
Yeah,
the
match the movie. They had a pay-per-view.
There you go. So I think that's why Zeus kind of got out there really early, and it's really weird. Like the Powers of Pain kind of got themselves disqualified too. I always thought DiBiase was like always like that one heel where I don't know. Hogan kind of did some heelish things back at him, it was weird.
And something I wanted, because I forgot to bring it up during the last one where the Powers of Pain were actually baby faces. So I was reading in an old Observer the other day that apparently when the Powers of Pain first came to the WWF, like their first month in, they weren't on TV. They were just being used as like fake replacements. They'd be like, Strike Force can't make it tonight, so instead here's this new team, and they wouldn't announce who they were. They just had the Powers of Pain walk out, and they got these huge babyface reactions because they assumed that it was the Road Warriors. Mm-hmm. It was the sleaziest thing I've heard of, but apparently it worked because they were over in the buildings for a while. Yeah, it was the match.
All right.
Yep, yeah. Usual Hogan. Kind of funny Hogan didn't end this show because he had the previous. Kind of made you wonder if a shift was in the works.
Possibly Joe Gagne and his amazing detective skills.
Yes.
So, moving on, we have maybe my favorite Survivor Series team name ever, the Rude Brood against Roddy's Rowdies.
I screw that up all the time.
I think everybody does. Like, if you ever hear, like, anyone on TV that's, like, just kind of a casual wrestling fan, like, someone on, like, Jay Leno talk, I was a wrestling fan when I was little, and I loved Rowdy Piper, or they would get the two, like, mixed up. Everybody does that. Everyone. But it was the Rude Brood of Rick Rude, Mr. Perfect, and the fabulous Rougeau brothers, with both the Genius and Jimmy Hart at ringside, because the Genius needed some help, because apparently he wasn't smart enough. And he defeated Rowdies of the Bushwhackers, Jimmy Snuka, and Roddy Piper, which, like, Piper went on TV, and he's like, I need the toughest guys ever, because this team's really good that I'm facing, and out comes Snuka. And he's like, this is the toughest guy ever. He's beaten me from pillar to post. And that's how they explained it. And the Bushwhackers apparently they eat sardines a lot, so they're tough.
It was a very rowdy bunch, so I give them credit for truth in advertising.
Very smelly bunch, I imagine, too.
Yeah, the only thing I really remember about this match is the pre-match promo, because they had it like in like the bathroom or something like that, or like in the showers or something. They kind of did it. They were all eating a pineapple or something. It was.
I thought it was a turkey because of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's right. It was their bones, and they were singing, and it was it was turkeys. Obviously, that would make a lot more sense being the Thanksgiving Day tradition. So,
I remember the post match. Mr. Perfect was the sole survivor for his team, and afterwards the Rougeaus and Rick Rude all congratulated him, which you didn't really. It wasn't like a team. Like, when the guy survived at the end, it wasn't really like you thought a team win. It was like, oh, this guy won, and the recruit's like, yeah, we won, and it's like, oh, okay, even though you went to a double DQ with Roddy Piper. Sure.
I think Mr. Perfect and Rick Rude was like such a cool tag team. It's too bad that like we never really got to see that like in great detail. I guess maybe like in like today's WWE, like you would see like those kind of two people like on the place like in the and the company maybe teaming together a lot more, and I guess it kind of really didn't happen so much, but that would have been like a cool dynamic. I guess we never got to see, but oh well.
Yeah, WCW did that like 8 years too late. Because
because
Rude was going to come back like before he died.
Exactly, because I remember they were like the NWO. They weren't like the B team, but they were always like they would always just feud with like they would always have like lower level feud. It was Kurt Hennig and Rick Rude.
And they were the weirdest guys in the NWO because like guys who joined the NWO just so they could be over because they have the shirt on. Yeah. I rarely remember like Kurt Hennig wearing the NWO shirts. Yeah. And I don't think Rude ever. He always wore the suit. He always wore the suit.
So
it was almost like these guys were NWO in name only. Yeah. Like, I wouldn't trust those guys over there. They don't wear the same uniform. So anyway, the main event, the Ultimate Warriors of the Ultimate Warrior, Jim Neidhart, and the Rockers. Who that's a rowdy bunch. They should have been Roddy's Rowdies, Part 2. They defeated the Heenan family of Haku, Arn Anderson, Andre the Giant, and Bobby himself, who was in the match because it was supposed to be both Brainbusters. But the way that Tully Blanchard explains it, I listened to an interview he did like a couple months ago, and apparently the story was he failed a drug test, so he got fired. His story is that he was trying to get like a bunch of guys together to like jump to the NWA at the same time, and they found out about this mutiny, and all of a sudden this drug test that he had failed like a year ago, the results all of a sudden came out. And they're like, we gotta fire you, and we're going to fax the results to Jim Herd, so you can't get hired over there either. Which, a dick move for a dick move, whatever. Yep. And I remember Heenan being awesome in this match, like he usually is.
Yeah, Heenan was like the last member of his team. It was actually down to Warrior and Heenan, and obviously Heenan Warrior went over Heenan there. And I think it was, if you guys remember, Heenan was like walking back in the aisle, and they were on like the post pay-per-view like music video like rundown whatever to like Warriors music, and then as Heenan's like finally standing up and getting ready to walk in the back, Warriors running from the ring to get to the back too, and he kind of knocks them down in the show. So it's really cool. I remember at the time though being really young watching this. I'd watch it at when I rented the video, how cool it was that the Rockers were teaming with the Ultimate Warrior. It was just kind of like one of those teams where you really didn't see that, often at that time. And the fact that the Rockers were kind of teaming with the member of the Hart Foundation, too, was really weird because they rarely, they were both face tag teams, but they rarely interacted with one another. I think they only had like a handful of matches, too, so you really didn't see them too often. But I guess because they were trying to split the Hart Foundation. But I don't know. I mean, it's a fun match. It's nothing great, but it only went 20 minutes anyway. Joe, what are your thoughts on it?
I just remember feeling kind of bad for the heels because Andre got eliminated right off the bat. Warrior knocked him out. He got counted out. It was almost basically 4-on-2 at that point because Heenan wasn't going to do a whole lot. It was pretty much Anderson and Haku against the four baby faces. But there was a point where Bobby Heenan pinned it was Mari Jannetty pinned him because Arn Anderson did it. I think it was Haku or Arn. They did a move. Jannetty was out. Heenan tagged in and pinned him, and the crowd was pissed about this. As was I. But that was an epic little moment. But kind of somewhat curious ending to the match. But
didn't they do like a promo heading into this pay-per-view where like wasn't Andre the Giant's face was painted like the Ultimate Warrior's face paint or something like that along those lines, wasn't it?
They did that. I think it was more for like the house show feud where every night Warrior would beat Andre in like a minute. Okay. But like beforehand, I do remember what you're talking about where Andre had his face painted like the Warrior, which just looked goofy. So anyway, we're going to move on to 1990 right now.
Yes.
Which is
my favorite. It's my personal favorite Survivor Series of all time. I mean, it's just, as my, personal favorite, I guess, for a lot of sentimental childhood reasons too, and, in addition just being a lot of my favorite wrestlers on the same show. But anyway, go ahead.
And it starts with
I was going to say, I had to go back and revisit a lot of 87 and 88, but I remember 90, all the eliminations by heart, so.
Yeah.
Because I've seen this so many times. I watched it like every day because it was Thanksgiving night. I watched it that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because I had it off from school. I taped the pay-per-view and just loved it more each time.
I even had the WF. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tom. I even had the WF magazine. If everyone remembers what Kerry Von Erich on the cover, it had like the Survivor Series scorecard along with it. If you remember that, I'm gonna take a picture and post it in the thread that we post this show, and I'll actually have like a ton of stuff I'm going to take pictures of from these WF magazines and post them in, so check out that. But there was always the scorecard too, and I remember like because this was on Thanksgiving night, like watching this with my cousins, and I remember just everyone just going nuts at the time because like everybody was on this show, so it was really cool.
And I hope like you actually wrote predictions because I kind of want to see what
Oh yeah, I think I do actually have it.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
And also, if I were running a Survivor Series team in like '91, I would have picked Joe Gagne as the coach since he was reviewing the tape so much. So anyway, the first match had like in kayfabe terms like the toughest team ever, consisting of the Ultimate Warrior, the Texas Tornado, and the Legion of Doom. Like seriously, as like a 6-year-old kid, who would think anybody could beat those four? Like,
well, it kind of had, it kind of had like a double meaning too because they were both, the Road Warriors wasn't Kerry Von Erich the modern day warrior,
after
and then
the Rush song, a Tom Sawyer.
And then like you had the Ultimate Warrior, so it was kind of like that subtle inside joke maybe if people were paying attention to because they weren't the Ultimate Warriors, which was what the 1989 team was. They were just the Warriors. So yeah.
And
I also did predictions for this match. I will just say I had the Warriors with a clean sweep because I did not see who would beat any of them, but it was the referee and Kerry Von Erich's drug problems that to them.
And also I wanted to bring up, like, because, they have the opening deal. Tonight, Team Captain, Ultimate Warrior, blah, blah, blah. And they have the little squares.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And for the demolition ones, they all wore, like, the Gimp masks.
Yeah,
So you could have just used the same picture 3 times. But no, they specifically, if you look closely, it's a different picture for each guy.
It is. I was watching right before we recorded this, and I noticed that, too. That's funny.
So, like everyone said, there was the big schmoz in the ring with pretty much half of the field getting disqualified for brawling, which that was a theme because we're not going to probably talk about it too much, but in '91 they did something very similar with the Ric Flair match. It was kind of BS-y. But yeah, Warrior goes over. He becomes the first Ultimate Survivor, which we're going to bring it up later because we have the obvious, the teams. It's obviously babyfaces versus heels, but if this were real terms, how would you decide who goes on what team? Like,
I remember it was left kind of vague, like there will be an ultimate match of survival, and you're like, oh, but they kind of like just had like Rudos and Technicos, like the good guys and bad guys team up.
Well, they should have had to like split up the Visionaries so Hogan would have to like fight from within. Paul Roma like stabbing him, literally. Get up, man. With those glasses they used to wear with the points. Oh. That would have been fantastic. So anyway, the second match, we have the $1 million team, which seriously, Ted DiBiase was the most unoriginal captain ever. 2 years in a row, they were the $1 million team. It could have been like the rich guys or something.
I don't know. Dusty Rhodes gives him some competition in this match.
Very true. Because, he used it last year as well.
He does. And that'd been used like 5 times before, so...
But they should have given the captainship to Coco. Just be like, here's for good citizenship. Or good attendance, because he was at Coco. They can be the Wild Birds. Or what's that game? What's that app on the phones? Wild Turkeys or whatever.
Angry Chickens.
Angry Chickens.
Right?
No, not...
Right? Angry Birds?
Something like that. They could have been that, and Coco could have sued for rights fees. Anyway, you have Ted DiBiase and Rhythm and Blues, including their mysterious mystery partner, against the dream team of Dusty Rhodes, Coco, and the Hart Foundation, who's back together this year for some reason. No, the mystery man, like, it's funny because I went back and read, like, because on Google they have a bunch of old news group, like, archives, and there's a bunch of stuff from Rexport Pro Wrestling, and a bunch of stuff from, like, the 90 Observers, and there's all this speculation who was going to be in the egg, nothing about DiBiase's guy, which should have been just as big, if not even a bigger deal. But, the whole deal going in was, the take that Mark Callow was going to come in as the Eggman, which I'm sure whoever decided to switch that around, or if it even was going to happen, and apparently, like, one of the roundtables, somebody did say that at one point he was going to be the Eggman. Whoever switched that around, I'm sure they get a Christmas card from the Callaway. That's every year. Because seriously, imagine if he had to come out wearing an egg. His career would have been DOA. But yeah, Taker comes out, and it's weird because I did watch this match because I swore I remember this horrible chokeslam he threw, which he did. There was this awful chokeslam like a minute into the match where where Brett gets swung off to the ropes, and then he just kind of like tackles him with a choke.
Yeah. He also fucked up the tombstone that he did. He did it way to Coco Beware to eliminate him. He did it like way too close to the ropes, like, and he kind of had to move him over to kind of pin him because he did the whole crossing the hands bit too.
But
so.
man, it looked like it killed him though. Like it looked like Coco's head was
that was
really
vicious.
I just remember watching it with my friends and being like, "Oh my god, that's mean Mark Callis," because we were fans of him because he did the heart punch. I remember grabbing like a PWI which had like a spotlight on Mark Callis, and Luthez is like, he's a good competitor, but you can't cheat so much, and and be like, "Oh my god, this is the best mystery partner ever, right? As far as a payoff."
Yeah. Oh,
and
absolutely.
I can't think. I mean, most of them are just beyond lame, but this is like, oh my, this is like a 20-year headlining run guy's debut. And
yeah, I think this was only like his second or third WWF match too, because I think he debuted. This was on this was Thursday, I guess, like the week before when they did like the TV tapings. Like he had like one or two matches, so this was like only like I believe like his fourth match in the company. So that's pretty cool. Like that, it started here at the Survivor Series 90. And
it wasn't even that. He debuted that Monday before because they did TV Monday and Tuesday.
Well, there you go. Yeah,
and then they got Wednesday off to rest, and then Thursday they did this match. So yeah, and I remember by the time they were done taping TV on Tuesday, they changed his name because he was Kane the Undertaker.
Kane the Undertaker.
Yeah,
I could have sworn that DiBiase, when he introduced him, called him Kane the Undertaker, but I guess he did, and I must have just been thinking of like Mike McGurk or someone on Challenge or
who
whatever.
should have been on Old School Raw, by the way.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But
where is she?
She's a model probably somewhere.
Oh.
She's in my heart forever.
Now here's something that just occurred to me. You had Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes debuted around this time. He went to the 10-minute draw with Ted DiBiase.
Oh, yeah.
Then his dad skipped over him for his own team in favor of Coco Beware. Like, that's got to be a slap in the face.
I know, right?
I know they just want Coco to get destroyed by The Undertaker, but still. Like, seriously?
And Coco took the awesomest bump ever in this match. Like, he runs at Undertaker dodges him, and he bounces throat first, and then jumps like 10 feet in the air backwards.
Yeah.
And lands on his rear end. It is awesome. Like, it's on like, if you type in like Undertaker 1990 into YouTube, it's on all the videos. That's awesome. But,
I was going to say the last like couple minutes with DiBiase and Bret Hart's really good.
Yeah, I guess it was right when Bret Hart's one of his brothers died too. So
I think the day before, yeah.
Yeah, it was Dean Hart. He died, and I think Roddy Piper kind of mentioned it on commentary too. So. Well,
and there's a story that DiBiase went to Vince and said, "Hey, can I put Bret over and not tell him?" And Vince was like, "You can do whatever you want in the ring, but at the end you're going over, Ted."
Mm-hmm.
So.
I think this is one of the very first times too. If you pay attention closely, you can kind of see them calling spots. I think Ted DiBiase and Bret Hart were kind of at the end. I remember there being like some sort of talk where the cameras kind of caught them, and I guess at that time that was pretty rare. You didn't see that too often, so kind of a little trivia on that. But anyway.
Oh, Ted DiBiase, you world ruiner, you.
Yeah.
So in the next we have maybe the meanest Survivor Series team name ever, possibly the Visionaries.
Yeah, I was gonna say these are my two favorite team names of all time in terms of the Vipers against the Visionaries, because I completely bought into that angle. Again, Keith Elliott Greenberg, you rascal. He had like an article like in WWF Magazine where after Rick Martel blinded Jake Roberts with arrogance, I really thought that Jake Roberts only had one eye, because I guess there was a picture of him where he kind of had like a fake contact in to make it look like he had no eyeball. It was really cool. So I don't know. I remember just loving this at the time because I was such a big Rockers fan too. So.
And then this is like the first clean sweep in Survivor Series history. The entire babyface team got defeated by the heels, which poor everybody on that team. So that being said, Sean did get the job with the coolest move in the world, the Powerplex. Yeah, Jake got disqualified, and I'm thinking about this blind angle. They really should have done something where like a heel threw Jake outside the ring, and then he got lost because he can't see where he's going. So he'd like end up in the third row.
Well, they would have like counting down to the Survivor Series, like Jake Roberts going to the doctors, and I guess like his eye, is his eye gonna be ready? And then I guess, plus like I think it was also built up on the Brother Love show every week too, like because that's really where the angle took place. So
yeah, Jack Tunney would have been a douchebag if he would have let Jake wrestle blind. So anyway, speaking of douchebags,
so did you have any thoughts on this real quick? We kind of glanced over.
It kind of made me sound like a total douchebag.
No, like you said, clean sweep. Some really cool stuff on the hillside, and I have nothing else to add.
Also, Randy Orton would have been pissed if he were in a time machine.
That's a good team name for a Randy Orton team. Like last year he had one, but oh well.
See, they should have brought back, if anything, for the team name. Because guys actually have, you could have like the Chain Gang against the Visionaries or the C Nation. You know, at least.
What would you name the teams this year?
There's only one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one. There's only one.
One match, yeah.
Like,
only one match.
I would have called like the Alberto Del Rio team like
SmackDown Swag or SmackDown Smug or something like that.
SmackDown Smug. Are you are you 8-year-old Tom trying to name like WWE 6-man tag teams that he
exactly. It'd have to have like some like really like
I'd call them like Team
Arrogance.
I think $1 million.
Arrogance would be a cool name.
Something in Spanish. Let me check Babelfish and see what. I know about Ray. The 619 or something stupid.
619ers.
The SD Elite. I came
San
up
Francisco 619ers. This is the San Francisco 619ers are a football. The 69ers are a football team.
Yes.
Or are the 49ers? I have a dirty mind. But
anyway, we can kind of maybe just. I don't know what else is there on this show. Oh, there's the natural disasters and the Hulkamaniacs. I'm trying to think. I don't really remember too much about this. It went under 15 minutes. There really no match went more than 18 minutes. So it was kind of a lot of fast pinfalls and stuff like that for this show.
And just looking at, because the one match I remember nothing about on this show was the Alliance and the Mercenaries.
I remember
that lineup. Man, Tito and Tanaka, poor guys. Look at the rest of those teams.
Yeah, but they blasted through that like a Divas match last year. Like it was just bang, bang, bang. And I just remember Rick Rude was supposed to be on the Natural Disasters, but he was suspended for making comments about the Big Boss Man's mother. Meanwhile, Rick Martel blinds a dude, and that's apparently kosher in WF land. I know that's not the real reason.
I'm thinking Boss Man's mom and Jack Tunney had something going on.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know is that Rick Rude was supposed to be on the Natural Disasters, and then I guess Rick Rude eventually left WWF around that time and was replaced by
Haku.
Haku ended up replacing him. Yeah, and the same went with the Alliance and the Mercenaries. It was actually supposed to be Akeem teaming with Sergeant Slaughter and Orny Express, and I think Akeem kind of got released around this time because he was then replaced by who was it? It was help me out here. It was
Zukov.
Boris Zukov. That's right. So yeah, it was supposed to be Akeem, and I guess Akeem kind of I think he was like let go around this time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they cut like a lot of dudes.
Yeah.
Like Valentine, I think got cut around this time, but they told him he could stay on Night by Night.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember the roster like shrank to the point where they had to bring guys back for the Rumble too that they had fired. And then 92 not to, jump ahead into something we won't talk about, but 92 Rumble, 10 guys in that Rumble were fired within that week.
Yeah.
I think Valentine had been rehired and then fired again. So, but moving on, we have the grand finale match of survival, as it's called on Wikipedia. I just figured it was the Ultimate Survivors match. But no, we had as it puts, the babyface team, which they should have just said on TV. And these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, and they should have just said Hogan's going over at the end. It's Hogan, Warrior, and Tito Santana against the team of Ted DiBiase, Rick Martel, the Warlord, and Power and Glory, which they list Virgil as a manager, which I think is awesome. What could he have been like, hey, punch him again. What should we do now, Virgil? Punch him again, because that's all Virgil ever did. Punched. So, but yeah, and they gave Tito a victory, which I always thought was kind of, because you figure, he's in there to be the one babyface that loses, and then the ultimate good guys clear everybody else. But no, Tito Santana, and he even beats the one guy you'd think would be around, so it could be the big monster at the end against the really, really good guys. But no, he beat the Warlord in 30 seconds.
20 seconds, yeah. That kind of killed the Warlord. Also the fact he was a stiff, but that was I was so glad Tito got a win, but I was so surprised Warlord went out to one move in 30 seconds. And
then immediately DiBiase gets rid of Tito because can't have any of them little guys. Wasn't he still wearing the Strike Force tights?
He was.
Yes. Nobody gave him the clue. Rick Martel walked out on you, bro.
No, he was he was, but they didn't have like the strike on. They had like a sombrero on him.
Yeah, true.
I don't think because I don't think it was. I think it was someone with the sombrero.
Weren't they captains the previous year or something? Like I thought like Martel and Tito were like.
No. In 88 they were.
88.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they broke up at WrestleMania 5.
No, I mean like I thought they were like captains against each other or something like that. Because I know they were paired up on teams against each other.
Yeah, they were on. Yeah, Martel was on was on the Enforcers, and Tito was on the Dusty's team, I think.
I always thought it was weird that they never got a blow-off match for that feud.
Yeah.
Everybody remembers it, and it.
Yeah, it was like right around WrestleMania 6, like they had like a match, I think, and that was kind of it. Because from there they kind of went with the model persona a little bit more and kind of shied away from everything.
So yeah, Hogan and Warrior beat everybody. A familiar theme of 1990.
And then there was the Gobbledygooker as well, so there was obviously that we didn't mention.
But everybody's beat that to death.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was really bad though. I just remember being like, as awesome as The Undertaker coming out was, it was just like shame when the Gobbledygooker came out and danced.
But if it was in reverse, it would have also never worked. If Taker was in that costume and Hector Guerrero came out as The Undertaker. But anyway, so those are the 4 awesome Survivor Series. If you've never seen them, first off, you're really young. Second off, go watch them. Cause you honestly have like no scope of, the anger anyone has towards them wasting the concept unless you've seen these 4 shows. Cause I don't think there's been, any, 95 was kind of close, but their roster was really depleted by that point. But besides that, I mean, this was the era that made the Survivor Series. Because then from there they try to get too fancy with it and try to screw around with it, and I don't know.
They moved it to Thanksgiving Eve the next year.
Yep, and they had a singles match shoehorned in. 91 was a terrible, terrible show, by the way. Tuesday in Texas is a lot better.
Yeah, which they honestly, they focused, like, that was the show. If you go back, it's just like, the entire show, they should have just had a thing up on the screen the whole time that said, buy Tuesday in Texas. Because that's what the focus of the show was getting people to buy the Tuesday show. Without any TV build, which was stupid.
I have a question for Joe. Does the '93 show hold a special place in your heart, being in Boston at the old Boston Garden and all? Because it was an all right show, I guess, all around. Bobby Heenan is the star of that show. If anyone has ever watched it and just listened to Heenan's commentary, he's great. It was one of Heenan's last shows. I believe.
He got kicked out around that time.
Yeah,
it was like December he got kicked out, right? So that was pretty much. Yeah. The end for him. Just because it was in Boston, I wasn't there live. I didn't see it. It's an okay show. That's one with the Longhart brothers against the Shawn Michaels and his Knights match, I think, and also the Foreign Fanatics against the All Americans or whatever they were called. So that kind of does, but not just because it was in Boston. Because Turkey on the cover of the VHS tape.
So anyway, any other like generic random Survivor Series thoughts, like at all, about any of the others?
Well, I have a couple. I kind of maybe want to let our guests go. Joe, if you have any first, and then Tom and I can maybe add what we have to.
No, you guys go ahead. I just want to say 91 stunk. I've said
I want to say I really like the 96 Survivor Series. It was kind of a good blend, I guess, with your Survivor Series elimination match, and then had like a singles match, and it holds a good place in my heart too because I watched it with like all my cousins. This was actually on like a Sunday, and I think I watched it with like my cousins and like a lot of my friends from like 6th grade. I think I was in at the time, and then I remember the next day we were all going crazy about what Psycho said did to Jose Lothario. He made him in a heart attack. I thought he was dead. But that was, I remember that match being great because Sid was basically a heel at that time, and Shawn was, your babyface champion, and he kind of loses to Sid here, and Sid just got a huge pop in the Garden, like this monster heel just won the title, and I remember that match always really sticking out, being really good. Bret Hart and Steve Austin had arguably their best match that they ever had. I mean, a lot of people will say the WrestleMania match, and including myself, I think the WrestleMania match is better, but there's a lot of people who, have a good stance in saying that this was probably, their best match, and they have a good case because this was a really good match too. I believe this was Flash Funk's debut, and I remember at the time, like, Too Cold Scorpio in WWF was, that was so awesome, and, just really never worked out, I guess as we can look back on it and see, but I guess it's too bad, but at least for a night, Flash Funk. And Doug Furnace and Philip Fun are another two guys that were on. They had a really good match, opening match with like Owen Hart. They had like a lot of good stuff. I think they worked with Al Snow. They were like throwing him around too. And because I remember at the time, Dan Crowfat and Doug Furnace were like in ECW, and they never really gelled. But I remember always hearing like these guys are be really good, and they kind of never worked. But I think for this night they weren't too bad. So plus beating in Madison Square Garden, I think it was the first Survivor Series in the Garden, if I'm correct. So yeah, it was that's always another Survivor Series that stands up pretty good. And Survivor Series 95, we talked about that too real quick. One thing I always remember about it is Karate Fighters, because I think that was like the sponsor for it, and Karate Fighters was like, it was just this really goofy toy I think I got for Christmas, and they were really cool, but I think I got really just incredibly sick with them. But I remember they would always have like tournaments every year too. I think they had like Sable and Jerry Lawler or something like that, so I'm not really sure exactly what it was, but yeah, and Tom, you talked about it was like the Body Donnas against the Underdogs was the name of the match. It was Skip Radford, Tom Pritchard, and the 1-2-3 Kid against Marty Jannetty, Hakushi, Barry Horowitz, and Bob Holly.
Yeah, that match is awesome.
Yeah, it's a great match. If people haven't seen it, I definitely advise you go and check it out. It's really good.
Like, instead of like just of like spreading the horses around for the time, they just put them all in one match. So tear it up, guys. I think it wasn't like Sid originally supposed to be in that match, which would have been awful. Or somebody, because I swear Kid replaced somebody.
Yeah, I'm not really...
I can't find it here. Like, let me look elsewhere. But I swear, like, the 1-2-3 Kid, like, replaced somebody or something.
I think Avatar was supposed to be in it, wasn't he?
Yeah, well,
I think I remember that being, like, in the WF magazine. I don't have that
Honestly, he probably was, because I remember that's around the time that he came around.
Yeah, I think it was probably Avatar. I'll
it was Jean-Pierre Lafitte who was replaced, which I don't know if that would have made the match better or worse, because he was kind of awesome. Yeah, and they explained it, because he was hurt, but they said that DiBiase paid him to go swim or something, or go be a pirate and leave. And yes, Avatar was originally supposed to be a member of that team, and they pulled the gimmick at the last second because they thought it sucked and put Bob Holly on the team instead.
Yeah, and this is one of the few matches at that time too where they had actually had heels teaming up with faces, because they had like the wild card match, I think it was called.
The Charlie Day special, yes.
Yeah. Joe, any thoughts on
96 was that's like a legit great pay-per-view, because you had don't forget The Rock debuted during that, and along with the Austin Hart match in the main event, which is great, and Furnace and LaFon, and I mean that's probably the best Survivor Series, I think. 1990 holds a very special place in my heart, but aesthetically pleasing matches, I think 96 is tough to beat.
So with that being said, anything else, guys, or because I mean the 2000s?
Yeah.
2000 just happened, so...
Yeah, honestly, like, a lot of things in the 2000s kind of go together. I was entering high school, I was in college. I think both, we can all kind of relate, to around that area where it's like, you're not really a kid anymore, and it's kind of, I don't know, it kind of really doesn't blend as well as, or, you kind of don't remember it years later. They kind of all... Because once they did the tournament in 98 and then 99, it kind of... I don't really remember much about 99. I think maybe that was like around the year where Rikishi hit Steve Austin with the car or something like that in the Joe Louis Arena.
The only thing I remember is that Big Show was a team by himself.
Yeah. It's one of those
and the Headbangers were pimps, because they teamed with D-Lo and the Godfather.
Yeah.
And they were like all pimps, and it was all pimps.
I love the Headbangers, man. I might be the only one, but the Headbangers are always cool in my book.
Hey, Alan, don't do a Headbanger show. Hint, hint. So anyway, with that, I think we can head out of here. We've done the show's justice.
I think this show went longer than an hour, so I wonder if Joe Gagne is going to listen to it. But anyway.
I don't know. I'm kind of torn.
Okay, thank Natalie and Bruglia.
But thank you so much for coming on, Joe. I really appreciate it. We'll have Joe back on in a few weeks, because we're going to do our best of 2010 show, so I'm sure we'll have Joe on then, I'm sure, to talk about whatever.
I thought you were going to say Tatanka.
Yeah, and Tatanka if you want to. What's really funny? Tatanka was on the Law last week. I only really listen to Law because I like to listen to Dave at midnight before I go to bed. And I guess Tatanka was on it because he was talking to one of the guys at the ROH show in Canada. And he was like, "Oh yeah, John Laurinaitis called me to go down to the old school run to be on a show." And like all Tatanka ended up doing was that little stupid skit where he was in the back dancing. He didn't even have a match, but Oh well, I know. I think he had his heart set on having a match, but never ended up working for him.
So anyway, with that, we're gonna head out, and yeah, poor Tatanka. But we'll be back. We're gonna take next week off at least, if not a couple weeks. You guys can go a couple of weeks without us, but we'll be back in time for the holidays. We'll have all of our buddies on.
Plenty of shows. Yeah. We have some really big guests too that we're excited about. So
don't tell them about Ahmed Johnson. Oops.
Damn it.
So anyway, with that, we're gonna head out. Thanks once again to Joe. Thanks to you for listening, and thanks to Oxygen for letting us breathe it.